This is Lord Rick of the Paranormal Ghost Society. We are in Reno, and we're investigating the old Hebrew Cemetery. I don't know if you guys remember, but I'll show you. There's about 5 cemeteries in this small area, and I'll try to make sure we lock it. I'll try to show you that there are other cemeteries nearby. You could stand from here and see 2 different ones we've already investigated. Once during the day and once at night. We got about a reading of 2 right now. If there's anybody here with me, give me a sign you are here. By talking to these spirits and entities and our dearly departed, we can also help increase activities such as EMF readings. And you get other good things like EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, which is basically audio recordings from the dearly departed. Even though we're in a big city right now, you can see that it's very, still very scenic. Of course, she also has some houses and apartments around here. And you're pretty close to downtown Reno, old downtown, straight ahead, and the university. But I'll show everyone what I mean. You have the Grand Army of the Republic, and then you have Hillside or Reno Hilltop Cemetery. And actually, it's just a cemetery that sits up on a hill. Reno was the place where the birth of gambling began. Was around old Reno in the pioneer days. And then eventually it spread to Las Vegas and other places. And a lot of ghost towns took on roulette and poker, eventually slot machines. It's a beautiful cemetery. The Hebrew Cemetery isn't very large, but you could see that's the Grand Army of the Republic, and then beyond the fence, all that open area. It's part of a lot of graves hidden or vandalized, but they're all overgrown by vegetation as the Hilltop or Hillside Cemetery of Reno. And then you have the Knights of Pythias Cemetery, which is actually back in here. I'll have to drive around the block to get to it, but I have plans to do today the Hebrew Cemetery, eventually the Knights of Pythias Cemetery. Oh, look at the lions. That's gorgeous. And then eventually, to finish off the evening, we'll go to Franktown Cemetery, which Franktown Cemetery, not a lot of people know this. Oh, I can see the Knights of Pythias through the fence. Let's see if I can kind of get it. The Franktown Cemetery is all that remains of the ghost town itself. Must be the Knights of Pythias. But Franktown basically was a small ghost town where a lot of lumberers and families lived. They had to sustain work at the old sawmills and to provide lumber to be shipped via flume or railroad in Washoe and Eagle Valley up to Carson City, where the Comstock Lode, which was one of the greatest mining industries or operations in the entire world. Some of the richest gold and silver came out of those mines. So you need a lot of lumber to be used in the mine. So Franktown was a lumbering ghost town, which very little remains up in the Carson Range. And we'll be visiting the Franktown Cemetery, one of the last remnants of the town. So it's important today, between the Hebrew Cemetery, the Knights of Pythias, and this small Hebrew graveyard that you see, it's very important that we do all 3 burial grounds. We don't always do cemeteries. It is very important that we try to at least visit all the cemeteries in the region. If you notice, these are the newer stones, but if you come around, now this cemetery is just as hilly. You can see it's not very even. Liberman. But if you come around the walkway, one side of the cemetery is all historical stones, and the other side are newer memorials. So you have the new memorials kind of on this side, and you have a lot of the older ones over here. So old north, newer south, divided by a walkway, which is kind of interesting. You know, a lot of them have the Star of David. Almost every grave has that. There are some very old graves here, though. I mean, we're talking a cemetery that's been around since the 1800s, before all these homes, apartments, the college, even casinos were built. This was all rural and to be used as cemetery grounds for the growing city of Reno. And now, if you kind of look at it, you're surrounded by city life. The star's carved out of wood. Isn't that amazing? Nathan First, 1879. (1873) is when the cemetery was erected, I believe. I've never seen wood grave markers with the Star of David carved so nicely into them. It's very symmetrical. It's amazing. We'll use this. This is one is a good example. This is all wood, and it's been carved. That's, you know what that is? That is just simply craftsmanship. Something, a skill nowadays very few people know of. How to carve into a wooden epitaph or build a monument such as this. If you notice, the Jewish culture is very extremely ancient and old. And it does interest me very much. It's why I'm here. A lot of their stones will be topped off. See how the big one? Look at the big one. And then you have this craftsmanship. Topped off of maybe an urn. Kind of looks like an urn with maybe a robe and a string of flowers. Maybe rose petals wrapped all the way around it. It's kind of how it looks. In this case, the top's broken off. So there has been vandalism done here. It is a city cemetery. I'm surprised it's not in worse shape than what it already is. But anyways, check us out, www.paranormalghostsociety.org. We're going to take some photos. I'll probably only take one video here, just because it's a small place, you know, and you pretty much on one video you can see everything. However, our EVPs, our pictures, our black and whites, all those great things that we conduct here today will go on our website, which is paranormalghostsociety.org. Ghost as in GHOST society.org. So paranormalghostsociety.org. Check us out. Come see what we're about. Get all the latest on all our cases and research and historical finds and oddities and mysteries and fine HD photography. It's all right there on our website. This is Lord Rick. I want to say peace. You can kind of see I'm a little bit full with paranormal equipment. My recorder, my EMF. Look, it's rising. We got about a 4. So you see there is some activity here. It doesn't lie. That's a medium rating and I'm standing in the middle of the cemetery, so it's quite possible that this cemetery could harbor some lost souls. And maybe not. Shabbat Shalom. That's what it says. I believe Shalom means similar to Namaste or peace or good health, something to that effect, like farewell. I got a reading about 4. It's about halfway. At least it's not in the red. But since I've been talking and since I've been investigating here, the EMF detector is growing, which means that I could collect some nice EVPs in this area if the energy's high enough or present. As you can see, folks, that Tammy was telling me these are lambs, and the lambs broke, and one's 9 and one's 7. Kids did die at a young age. The early 1900s all the way to the 1930s and 40s was a terrible time for Spanish flu, yellow fever. All these epidemics would sweep through these schools, and a quarter of the children would die. And they would be buried according to their faith which any of these cemeteries their parents chose to have them buried at. In this case, these were Hebrew children. Simpson. So, pretty tragic that even alone that someone would break the head off the lamb. There's a lot of anti-Semitic people who don't appreciate culture and graveyards. When I look at a graveyard, I look at them all equally, that they're a place for the dearly departed. And sometimes some of them are haunted, and some of them are just places to kind of remember that these were people once too. And without these people, there would be no Reno. There would be no Carson City. There would be no Franktown. There would be no Wild West. Not that this is paranormal or anything like that, but I just want to add this in my video clip of the cemetery that I had found the wing of a dead bird, but the rest of the bird is not present in this area. There's a few unknowns. Joe Bass, that's fairly fresh. Just wanted to show you, there's feathers everywhere. There's nothing left of this bird, just feathers and a wing. Some little kitty. Happy birthday, Mighty Mildred Greenman Kane. Probably a cat had a nice meal. Snatch that bird right up. But we're about to leave the cemetery. I just wanted to kind of show you a little bit what life is like in Reno. We are surrounded by some pretty beautiful mountains, but it is still a very big city here. It was much smaller in the 60s and 70s, and then once it hit 2000, it boomed, and the biggest little city in the world was then surrounded by thousands of homes and shopping plazas. So it's a little quiet in the cemetery, but you could still hear the highway nearby and ghost EVPs. It makes it all the more harder for us to get. But beautiful Wild West backdrop, most certainly. Also, I want to point out, ladies and gentlemen, there's 2 stones here that are heavily vandalized. These are older ones. One's from 1883. It's cracked right in the middle, and then where the name is. It could have been vandalized. It could have been tipped. A lot of times these stones don't fall on their own. They're pushed and they break. But in this case, where's the other half of this stone? It's gone. In memory of Rachel, beloved wife of Philip Freelander, age 25 years. You notice the pattern with the cemetery, everybody? All the people buried here, a lot of them are only in their 20s, 30s. Some of them are 9, 10, 11 years old. There's a few recent graves. I've seen about 20 recent graves, all buried from maybe in the 1990s that were born in the early 1900s. They lived to see World War I and World War II and the Vietnam War. So they went through 100 years of wars. And so this cemetery has been around far before that. So you have to understand there's a lot of history here, and that's one of the reasons we're here, is just to make sure that this does not happen again. We want to prevent graves from being destroyed. I mean, if you destroy the graves, you really have no history. I'm going to take some pictures of all the vandalized stones just to show for my website, but you can see right here, it looks like somebody broke off. Yep. Here's a little stone right here. Broken off. So there are some vandalized stones. We got to make sure it doesn't happen. Visit the cemetery, take nothing but pictures, leave nothing but footprints. That's what I always say. Come here, have a picnic, walk around, admire the Jewish people which once were a part of Reno's growth, and leave with good feelings. And people sometimes come here and they leave after breaking stones like this and like these with no really good reason as to why, except pure hatred and disrespect for the dearly departed.